Poor girl finds billionaire trapped in burning plane after crash. His plea for help changes her life forever. The asphalt was freezing under Ayla's feet. She stopped at the street corner, looked both ways, and chose the direction with less traffic. 5 years old, but she already knew it was better to go unnoticed. Her mother's blue button was in the pocket of her torn shirt. She squeezed it between her small fingers. It was all that was left. Her stomach rumbled loudly. Ayla stopped in front of a dumpster and looked around. A man in a suit walked by talking on his phone. A woman pushed a baby stroller. 2 teenagers laughed. No one paid attention to her. She lifted the dumpster lid. She found half a sandwich wrapped in aluminum foil. She sniffed it. It wasn't spoiled. She put it in her pocket along with the button. "Hey, kid." Ayla turned around. A stout man with stubble walked towards her. He smelled of alcohol, even from a distance. "What are you doing there? Where are your parents?" She ran off. Her bare feet slapped on the cold ground as she ran between people. She turned onto one street, then another. She only stopped when she was sure the man was no longer behind her. Ayla knew the city like few others. She knew where to find food, where to hide when it rained, where to sleep undisturbed. In recent months, the streets had become her home. She walked towards the industrial district. It was quieter there, safer. People asked fewer questions when they saw a child alone, or they simply didn't see them. The wind was strong. Ayla pulled her shirt down, trying to protect herself from the cold. Her legs were purple, but she no longer felt it. After weeks on the street, the body stops complaining. She passed a bakery. The smell of warm bread made her stomach rumble again. She stopped at the display window, looking at the golden loaves, the colorful cakes, the pastries that looked like precious jewels. A woman came out of the bakery carrying a bag. Ayla followed her with her eyes. The woman got into a nice car and drove away. She was probably going to a house with heating, a soft bed, and a family waiting. She took the half sandwich from her pocket and took a small bite. She had to make it last. She didn't know when she would find food again. The sky was getting dark. Ayla quickened her pace. She needed to find a place to sleep before the drunk men came out of the pubs. They made noise, yelled, sometimes chased her just for fun. She turned onto a narrow street. She knew that area. There were some closed shops, an empty parking lot, and across the street a vacant lot full of debris. That's where she usually slept. Ayla crossed the empty street and entered the lot. There were piles of old wood, pieces of concrete, some cardboard boxes that were still usable. She chose a corner protected by the wall, away from the street. She sat on the ground and finished the sandwich. It was dry, but it was food. She chewed slowly, savoring each piece. When she finished, she took the blue button from her pocket and held it against the faint light coming from the streetlights. It still shone like on the first day. The wind rustled the newspapers scattered across the lot. Ayla gathered some of the better preserved ones and made a small bed between the cardboard boxes. It wasn't comfortable, but it was better than the cold ground. She lay down and pulled more newspapers over her body. The headlines spoke of things she didn't understand: politics, economy, wars in distant countries, big words, adult problems. A cat appeared between the boxes. It was thin, with dirty fur, one ear injured. It looked at Ayla with suspicion. The cat approached slowly. It sniffed her hand, then curled up beside her. It was trembling from the cold. Ayla shared the newspapers with it. They stayed there, 2 lost creatures sharing the little warmth they had. She felt the cat's heart beating against her arm. It was comforting to know she wasn't completely alone. Sleep finally began to come. Ayla closed her eyes and let herself be carried away by exhaustion. Tomorrow would be another day, another search for food, another place to hide, another night to survive. Ayla woke up to the sound of footsteps. She slowly opened her eyes, without moving. She had learned to wake up silently, like a wild animal. There were 2 men. They walked through the lot, talking quietly. One of them carried a flashlight. "Are you sure it's here?" one asked. "I am." The guy said, "It's in this lot." Ayla held her breath. The cat had disappeared during the night. She was alone, hidden behind the cardboard boxes. The men walked away, heading towards the back of the lot. Ayla waited until she could no longer hear their footsteps. then carefully got up. She gathered the newspapers and folded them. You never knew when you might need them again. She put the blue button in her pocket and walked to the entrance of the lot. The morning was clear but cold. Some people were already walking on the streets, going to work. Ayla blended in with them, another shadow in the crowd. She passed a diner that was opening. The owner, a short, bald man, was hosing down the sidewalk. He looked at her and frowned. "Hey, kid, get out of here. I don't want beggars at my door." Ayla walked away without saying anything. There was no point in arguing with adults. They always won. She kept walking, looking for a place to spend the day. Her legs were tired, but she couldn't stop. Movement meant survival. She passed a park where some children were playing with their parents. She stopped for a moment, watching. The children laughed, ran, seemed to have no problems in the world. A woman in the park noticed Ayla and whispered something to her husband. They both looked in her direction. Ayla moved away. She walked through the city for hours. She passed shops, squares, tall buildings. She looked for food in dumpsters, but found nothing usable. Hunger was returning, stronger this time. Ayla stopped in front of a restaurant. Through the window, she could see people eating. Full plates, cups with colorful drinks, desserts that looked like works of art. Her stomach hurt just looking. A waitress noticed Ayla in the window and waved for her to leave. Ayla obeyed, but she could still smell the food in the air. The hunger was becoming unbearable. She found a crumpled piece of paper on the ground and started to chew it. It tasted like nothing, but it tricked her stomach for a few minutes. In the middle of the afternoon, she headed to the industrial district again, but this time, instead of going to the lot where she had slept, she decided to explore a new area. There were several abandoned factories around, surrounded by empty lots. The place was quiet, almost deserted, perfect for someone who wanted to go unnoticed. Ayla entered a larger vacant lot than the others. There was a lot of debris scattered around, pieces of metal, old wood, some tires. She walked among the wreckage, looking for a good place to hide. Her feet hurt. She had a cut on her right heel that wouldn't stop bleeding. She sat on a pile of bricks and looked at the wound. It was inflamed, with purple edges. Ayla tore a piece of her shirt and tied it around her foot. It wouldn't heal the cut, but at least it would stop the bleeding. She stood up and continued exploring the lot. The hunger was making her head ache. It had been 2 days since she'd had real food, just paper and some crumbs she'd found at the bottom of a dumpster. That's when she heard it. A strange sound coming from the sky, unlike anything she had ever heard. It wasn't a helicopter, nor a large bird. It was something bigger, deeper, like a distant roar. Ayla stopped and looked up. The sound was getting louder, closer, and there was something wrong with it. It wasn't the normal sound of a plane. And then she saw it. A small plane, flying too low, making a terrible noise. Black smoke came from one of its wings. The aircraft swayed in the air as if it were losing control. Ayla stood paralyzed, watching. The plane passed over her, so low that she could see windows, could almost feel the heat of the engines. And then, with a roar that made the ground tremble, it crashed. The explosion was deafening. High flames rose from the other side of the lot, where the plane had crashed into the ground. Pieces of metal flew in all directions. The smell of burning fuel filled the air. Ayla should have run. Any normal person would have run. But she approached the flames. The heat was intense, almost unbearable. But Ayla kept walking, shielding her face with her hands. Something pulled her towards the wreckage, a strange feeling she couldn't explain. She walked around the largest flames and got close to the plane wreckage. The cockpit was partially destroyed, but it was still possible to see inside, and that's when she saw him. A man was trapped in the pilot's seat. There was blood on his face. His clothes were torn, but his eyes were open. He looked at her through the cracked glass. "Help," he whispered in a weak voice. "Please." Ayla could have run away at that moment. She could have left the man there and run off, as she always did when there was danger. But something made her stay. She looked around and found an iron bar among the wreckage. It was heavy for her, but she managed to lift it. She used the bar to force open the cockpit door. The metal groaned, but finally gave way. Ayla dropped the bar and approached the man. "Can you move?" she asked. He tried to get up but groaned in pain. My leg is trapped, he said, and I think I broke some ribs. Ayla looked down. Part of the dashboard had fallen on his leg. She tried to lift it, but it was too heavy. She found a large stone and used it as a lever. She managed to lift the dashboard enough for him to pull his leg out. Now, she said. Slowly. The man moved carefully. He was injured, but managed to get out of the seat. Ayla helped him stand up. Thank you, he said, looking at her in astonishment. You're just a kid. Can you walk? He tried to take a step and almost fell. Ayla held him by the arm. Come on, she said. Don't you have to get out of here? They walked slowly, moving away from the wreckage. The man leaned on her, and despite being small, Ayla was stronger than she looked. Months on the street had taught her body to endure more than it should. When they reached a safe distance, the man sat on a pile of old bricks. He was pale, breathing with difficulty. What's your name? He asked. Ayla hesitated. She didn't usually tell her name to strangers. Ayla, she finally said. I'm Alan, he said. Alan Dryson. You're very hurt, she said, looking at the blood on his face. I'll be fine, he said. But you saved my life. On the horizon, sirens began to wail. Ambulance, firefighters, police. Someone had seen the explosion and called for help. Ayla stood up. They're coming, she said. They'll take care of you. Wait, Alan said, trying to get up. Don't go. I need to thank you properly. But Ayla was already moving away. The sirens were closer now. In a few minutes, and the place would be full of people asking questions. People who would want to know who she was, where she lived, where her parents were. She couldn't stay for those questions. Ayla, Alan shouted after her. Wait! But she was already running, disappearing among the wreckage of the vacant lot, as she always did, as she had learned to do. When she reached the other side of the lot, she stopped and looked back one last time. She could see the red and blue lights of the emergency vehicles arriving. She could see Alan being surrounded by paramedics. He was safe now. Ayla took the blue button from her pocket and held it against the late afternoon light. It shone, as always, reminding her of better times. She put the button back in her pocket and walked away from the lot. She needed to find a new place to sleep. Far from there, far from the questions that would come. But as she walked through the empty streets of the industrial district, she couldn't stop thinking about the man she had saved, Alan Dryson. Something about him was different, something she couldn't explain but which made her feel a strange sense of hope. Hunger gnawed at her again, stronger than before. Ayla put her hand on her stomach and continued walking, looking for food, for shelter, for another day of survival on the cold city streets. The sirens grew louder until they stopped right next to Alan. He was sitting on the bricks, trying to breathe without pain when the first paramedics arrived running. Sir, can you hear me? A woman in a blue uniform asked, kneeling beside him. I can, Alan replied hoarsely. There's a little girl. She helped me. The paramedic looked around, but saw no one other than Alan. What girl, sir? It's just you here. She was here. Small, about 5 years old. She pulled me out of the plane. The paramedic exchanged a look with her colleague. People in shock sometimes saw things that didn't exist. We'll take care of you now, okay? You can leave everything to us. They put Alan on a stretcher and carried him to the ambulance. He tried to look back, searching for Ayla, but the lot was empty. Only smoldering wreckage and firefighters extinguishing what remained of the fire. During the ride to the hospital, Alan closed his eyes and tried to remember every detail. The girl was real. She had talked to him, touched him, carried him away from the flames. It wasn't a hallucination. What's your name? The paramedic asked, checking his blood pressure. Alan Dryson. She paused for a second. The businessman, Dryson Industries? Yes. The woman signaled to her colleague, who immediately grabbed the radio to inform the hospital they were bringing in someone important. At the hospital, Alan went straight to the emergency room. Doctors and nurses moved quickly around him. Bright lights, urgent voices, the constant beeping of machines. Fractured left leg, a doctor said, looking at the X-ray. 3 broken ribs, cuts on the face that will need stitches, but nothing life-threatening. Doctor, Alan called, grabbing the doctor's arm. There was a child at the crash site, a little girl. I need to know if she's okay. Mr. Drayson, you hit your head. It's normal to experience mental confusion after such trauma. I didn't hit my head, and I'm not confused. She saved me. The doctor looked at Alan with professional patience. We'll run some tests to make sure everything's okay, all right? 3 hours later, Alan was in a private room, his leg in a cast, his ribs bandaged. An investigator from the insurance company had arrived to ask questions about the accident. Mr. Drayson, can you tell me what happened? Engine trouble. Lost control of the plane. Crashed in the vacant lot. And then, a little girl pulled me from the wreckage. Small, dark hair, dirty clothes. She saved me. The investigator wrote everything down, but Alan noticed the skeptical expression on his face. Sir, we checked the area. There was no one there, no witnesses, no cameras that recorded any child. But she was there. I spoke with her. Do you remember her name? Ayla? The investigator wrote the name, but Alan knew he didn't believe it. After the man left, Alan was alone in the room. The nurse had given him a painkiller, but he couldn't relax. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Ayla's face, her dark eyes, her serious expression, the careful way she had helped him out of the plane. She wasn't a hallucination, she was real. The next morning, the doctor came to visit. How are you feeling? And better. Doctor, about the girl. Mr. Drayson, I understand that you believe you saw a child, but trauma can cause... I know the difference between reality and hallucination, Alan interrupted him. She was there. The doctor sighed. Look, even if there was a child, she probably ran away when she heard the sirens. Children are afraid of authorities. Alan thought about that. It made sense. If she was a street child, she would naturally flee when the police arrived. Doctor, I want to hire someone to look for her. Mr. Drayson, she saved my life. I need to find her. After the doctor left, Alan picked up the phone and called his assistant. Marcus, it's me. Alan, man, what a scare. How are you? Alive, thanks to a child. I need you to find someone to help me. A private investigator, someone good with tough cases. Investigator, for what? To find the girl who saved me. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Alan, the doctor said you might have had hallucinations because of the... Marcus, I'm going to say this once. It wasn't a hallucination. A 5-year-old girl pulled me out of that plane and saved my life, and I'm going to find her, with or without help. All right. I'll see what I can do. In the afternoon, the nurse brought some newspapers. The headlines talked about the accident. Businessman survives plane crash. Alan Drayson escapes death in air accident. Miracle. CEO emerges unharmed from explosion. Alan read the articles. All of them talked about his luck, about how he had managed to get out of the plane alone before the explosion got worse. None mentioned Ayla. Of course not, he thought. No one saw her. He folded the newspapers and placed them on the bedside table. Then he looked out the hospital window. Outside, the city continued its normal routine. Cars, people, life happening. Somewhere in this city was Ayla, alone, probably hungry, sleeping in cold places, and he was there, in a comfortable room, with warm food and medical care. It didn't seem fair. Alan picked up the phone again and called Marcus. Did you find anyone? I did. Sarah Chen, private investigator. Very good at what she does. Specialized in missing persons. Great. Set up a meeting for tomorrow. Alan, are you sure about this? I mean, even if this girl exists, you don't know anything about her. It could be what? I don't know. Dangerous. What if her family is involved in something bad? Alan thought about it. But then he remembered Ayla's eyes, the calm with which she had acted, the kindness in her voice. It doesn't matter, he said. She saved me. Now it's my turn to do something for her. That night, Alan had trouble sleeping. Not because of the physical pain, but because of the questions that kept coming. Where was Ayla sleeping? Did she have food? Was she safe? He thought about his own childhood. He always had everything he needed. Big house, food on the table, clean clothes, warm bed. He never felt cold, never went hungry, never slept on the street. But Ayla, at just 5 years old, was living a completely different reality. And yet, she had risked her own safety to save a stranger. What kind of child does that? Alan wondered. The answer came immediately. A special child. A child who, even having lost everything, still had enough kindness to help others. He needed to find her. Not just to thank her, but to make sure she was okay. To do something to improve her life. Alan looked at the hospital ceiling and made a silent promise. "I'll find you, Ayla, and when I do, I'll do everything I can to help you." Outside, the city slept. But somewhere a small girl was probably awake, sheltering from the cold, looking for a safe place to spend another night. Alan closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but the image of Ayla's dark eyes remained there, reminding him that some things in life were more important than business, money, or success. Some things, like a lost child, needed to be found. Alan left the hospital 3 days after the accident. His leg still hurt, his ribs protested with every movement, but he needed to go back to that place. He needed to see with his own eyes where his life had changed forever. Marcus drove to the industrial district. The luxury car seemed out of place on those empty streets, between abandoned factories and vacant lots. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Marcus asked, looking at Alan in the rearview mirror. "I am. I can wait in the car." "No, I need to go alone." Marcus stopped in front of the vacant lot. Alan got out slowly, leaning on the cane the doctors had given him. Each step was a reminder that he had almost died there. The lot was different. The police had cordoned off the area with yellow tape, but it was already torn by the wind. Some people had passed by. There were footprints in the dirt, discarded soda cans, scattered papers. Alan walked through the entrance and headed towards the wreckage. What was left of the plane was covered by a black tarp. Smaller pieces of metal were still scattered around the area. Parts of the wing, fragments of the dashboard, broken glass that shone in the afternoon sun. He stopped where he had woken up after the accident. There, in that exact spot, Ayla had appeared. A 5-year-old child alone who could have run away but chose to stay. Alan sat on a pile of bricks, the same ones where he had waited for help to arrive. The smell of burning was still in the air, mixed with the odor of old fuel. Why am I alive? The question had haunted him for the past 3 days. He wasn't religious. He didn't believe in fate or miracles. He was a practical man who solved problems with logic and money. But there, looking at the wreckage of what should have been his death, he couldn't find a logical explanation. The plane had exploded. The flames were intense. He was trapped, injured, unable to get out alone. He should have burned to death in that wreckage. But I'm here. He looked around, trying to retrace Ayla's steps. She had come from somewhere, had seen him, had decided to help. A child who had probably never seen a plane up close, much less an accident like that. Because she saw me. She saved me. The answer came clear, simple. He was alive because a small girl had chosen not to run away. She had chosen to approach danger to save a stranger. Alan stood up and walked to where the plane's cockpit had been. The tarp covered most of the wreckage, but he could see pieces of the seat where he was trapped, fragments of the dashboard that had fallen on his leg. He remembered her voice, calm and determined. "Can you move?" There was no panic, no fear, just a child doing what needed to be done. He tried to imagine where she was now, probably in another vacant lot, looking for food, trying to keep warm. While he had spent 3 days in a comfortable hospital, she had spent 3 nights on the street. Guilt squeezed his chest harder than the pain in his ribs. Alan walked around the area, observing every corner. There were small footprints in the dirt. Some could be hers. He found a piece of fabric caught on a wire, dirty and torn. It could be from the clothes she was wearing, but these were just vague clues, tracks that could belong to anyone. He sat down again, this time on the ground, leaning his back against a pile of old wood. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and red, the same colors as the flames he had seen 3 days ago. How did a 5-year-old child have the courage to approach that? Alan thought about his own childhood. At 5, he was afraid of the dark, of big dogs, of being alone at home. His biggest problems were broken toys and food he didn't like. But Ayla was living a completely different reality. For her, danger was an everyday thing. Hunger, Cold, adults who could hurt her. She had learned to survive in a hostile world, and yet, when she saw someone in greater danger than herself, she had acted. What kind of person am I, Alan wondered, if a child with nothing has more courage than me? He had always considered himself successful. He had built a company from scratch, accumulated wealth, gained respect. But what had he done to deserve being saved? What had he given to the world to justify his life being spared? The answer was uncomfortable. He had spent years focused only on profits and on growth, on competition. He had donated to charities, but out of social obligation, not genuine compassion. He had helped people, but always expecting something in return. When was the last time he had helped someone without thinking about what he would gain from it? Never, he admitted to himself. But Ayla had done exactly that. She had risked her own safety to save a stranger, without expecting anything in return. She had acted with her heart, not with her head. Alan stood up and walked to the center of the area where the plane had crashed. This was ground zero for his new life. The place where the man he was had died, and the man he could become was born. He took his cell phone from his pocket and called Marcus. Marcus, cancel the meeting with the investigator. Cancel? But I'm going to look for her personally. Alan, you have no idea where to start. The city is huge. She could be anywhere. Then I'll look everywhere. Oh, that's impossible. You need professional help. Alan looked at the wreckage around him, at the place where a child had changed his perspective on everything. Marcus, all my life I've solved problems with money. I hired people, bought solutions, paid others to do what I didn't want to do. And it worked. You built an empire that way. But this isn't about business, Alan said, watching the sunset. This is about a girl who saved me when she didn't have to, who gained nothing from it, who probably doesn't even know who I am. So what? So what is that I'm going to find her the same way she saved me, with my heart, not with money. There was a long pause. You hit your head harder than the doctors thought, Marcus finally said. Alan smiled for the first time in 3 days. Maybe, or maybe I've finally come to my senses. He hung up the phone and stayed there for a few more minutes. The lot was silent now, only the sound of the wind rustling the scattered metal pieces. Halas, he thought, I don't know where you are, but I'm going to find you. And when I do, I'm going to do for you what you did for me. I'm going to give you a chance to be reborn. Alan put his cell phone away and began to walk back to the car. Every step hurt, but he felt lighter than he had in years. For the first time in his life, he had a purpose that didn't involve profit or success. He had a mission that came from the heart, not from ambition, to find the girl who had given him a second chance to be a better person, and he wasn't going to give up until he succeeded. Alan had spent 5 days searching, 5 days walking the city streets, limping with his cane, observing every child, every shadow, every corner where a small girl might hide. In the first 2 days, he had looked in the obvious places, squares, parks, near schools, places where children would normally be. But Ayla was not a normal child, and he soon realized he was looking in the wrong places. On the 3rd day, he changed his strategy. He began to look in the places a street child would choose: dark alleys, abandoned buildings, underpasses, places most people avoided. It was tough. Alan wasn't used to walking so much, especially with his injured leg. His ribs ached with every step, but he continued. At every corner, every new street, he hoped to see those dark eyes that had saved his life. On the 4th day, he started asking people on the street, homeless people, street vendors, people who knew the dark corners of the city. Have you seen a little girl? He would ask. Small, about 5 years old, with dark hair. Most shook their heads. Some asked for money before answering. Others looked at him with suspicion, wondering why a rich man was looking for a lost child. But at the end of the 4th day, a homeless man named Joe said something that gave Alan hope. There's a girl I see sometimes. Tiny, walks alone, doesn't talk to anyone. Where did you see her? Around there, near the old market street. But she doesn't stay in the same place for long. She's smart, knows how to hide. Alan thanked him and gave Joe some money. For the first time in days, he felt he was on the right track. On the 5th day, he woke up early and went straight to the old market street. It was a commercial area that was busy during the day, but at night it transformed into a quiet and gloomy place. He walked for hours, observing every building entrance and every alley, every place where a small child could shelter. The sun was setting when he saw her. Underneath the awning of a closed shop, there was a small figure wrapped in clear plastic. Alan approached slowly, his heart pounding. It was her. Ayla was sleeping, curled up like an abandoned cat. The plastic covering her was from a trash bag she had torn to make a makeshift blanket. Her feet were dirtier than last time, and he could see new scratches on her legs. Alan stopped a few feet away. She looked so small, so fragile. How had she survived alone for so long? He approached a little closer. The ground was cold, and he could imagine how cold she must be feeling too. Her lips were a little blue, and she trembled slightly, even in her sleep. Alan hesitated. What if she got scared? What if she ran away again? He had searched for her for days, and now that he had found her, he wasn't quite sure what to do. He decided to approach slowly. He made a little noise with his cane so as not to startle her too much, but enough to wake her gently. Ayla opened her eyes immediately. It was as if a switch had been flipped. 1 second she was sleeping, the next she was completely awake and alert. Her eyes moved quickly, assessing the threat. When she saw Alan, she curled up even more, ready to run. "Wait," Alan said softly, raising a hand. "I won't hurt you." Ayla didn't answer, but she didn't run either. She watched him with those same dark eyes he remembered, trying to decide if he was dangerous or not. Alan knelt down slowly, ignoring the pain in his leg. He wanted to be at her level, not to seem intimidating. "It's me," he said, his voice calm. "From the plane. You saved me." Ayla tilted her head slightly, studying his face. Alan could see the exact moment she recognized him. Her eyes widened a little, but she still didn't speak. "Do you remember me?" Alan asked. She nodded slowly. "I've been looking for you for days," he said. "I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to know if you're okay." Ayla looked at him for a long moment. Then her eyes moved to his cane, to the bandages that were still visible on his face. "Are you okay?" she finally asked, her voice small and hoarse. Alan smiled. It was the first time she had spoken, and the first thing she asked was about his well-being. "I'm okay," he said. "Thanks to you." They were silent for a moment. Alan could see that she was assessing the situation, deciding if she could trust him. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Ayla hesitated, then nodded. "Do you want to come with me? We can get something to eat." "Where?" "Wherever you want. There's a diner around the corner." Ayla looked in the direction he pointed, then back at him. "Why?" she asked. The question was simple, but Alan understood what she was really asking. Why was he looking for her? Why did he care? What did he want in return? "Because you helped me when you didn't have to," Alan said honestly. "And now I want to help you." "I don't need help. Everyone needs help sometimes." Ayla pulled the plastic tighter around her body. "The adults always want something." The phrase cut Alan's heart. A 5-year-old child had already learned to distrust all adults. How many times had she been disappointed to reach that conclusion? "You're right," he said. "Most adults want something, but I just want to make sure you're safe." "Why?" "Because you saved my life." "And because—" Alan paused, searching for the right words. "Because no one should have to live like this, especially not a child." Ayla studied him for a while longer. Alan remained still, letting her decide. Finally, she let go of the plastic and slowly stood up. She was even smaller than he remembered, too thin, with clothes that were too big for her. "It's okay," she said quietly, "but if you try anything, I'll run." "Understood." Alan got up carefully, leaning on his cane. They walked side by side to the diner around the corner. Ayla kept a certain distance, ready to flee if necessary. The diner was simple, with a few plastic tables and a counter where an elderly man prepared sandwiches. Alan and Ayla sat at a corner table. "What do you want to eat?" Alan asked, handing her the menu. Ayla looked at the options, but Alan noticed she was having trouble reading. "Do you want me to read it to you?" She nodded. Alan read each item on the menu, explaining what each thing was. Ayla's eyes widened when he mentioned a hamburger with fries. Can I order that one? You can order whatever you want. Alan ordered a complete hamburger for her and a coffee for himself. When the food arrived, Ayla ate slowly at first, as if she couldn't believe the food was really for her. Then she ate faster, as if someone was going to take her plate away at any moment. When was the last time you ate? Alan asked gently. Ayla stopped chewing and thought, 2 days ago I found half a bread. 2 days ago. She had gone almost 2 days without real food. And where have you been sleeping? In different places. I can't stay in the same place for too long. Why? Because adults always show up, ask questions, want to take me places. Alan understood. She was hiding from the system, from social workers, from people who would try to help her by putting her in shelters or orphanages. You don't trust anyone. Ayla stopped eating and looked at him. I trusted my mum. And now only myself. They finished eating in silence. When Alan paid the bill, Ayla watched him carefully, noticing the wallet full of money. Are you rich? She asked when they left the diner. I am. Alone? Alone. She shook her head, as if she couldn't understand why a person needed so much space. Inside the house, Ayla walked carefully, as if she was afraid of breaking something. Her bare feet made little noise on the marble floor. There's a lot of stuff, she said, looking at the expensive furniture, the artwork on the walls. There is, Alan agreed. Sometimes I think there's too much. He took her upstairs to the floor where the bedrooms were. Alan had quickly arranged one of the guest rooms for her. He had changed the sheets, put some children's clothes he had bought on the way, and made sure there were clean towels in the bathroom. This will be your room, he said, opening the door. Ayla entered slowly. The room was bigger than any place she had ever slept. There was a single bed with white sheets, a small desk, a soft armchair, and a large window overlooking the garden. She walked to the bed and ran her hand over the clean sheets. Is it just for me? She asked, her voice full of astonishment. It's just for you, Alan confirmed. Ayla looked at him, then back at the bed. I've never slept in one, she said. The sentence broke Alan's heart. A 5-year-old child had never slept in a bed. Want to try? Ayla nodded. She sat on the edge of the bed first, testing if it was real. Then she lay down slowly, as if the bed were made of glass and could break. When her head touched the pillow, her eyes closed automatically. It's soft, she whispered. So the bathroom is right there, Alan said, pointing to a door. There are clean towels, soap, shampoo, and these clothes are for you. Ayla opened her eyes and looked at the pile of new clothes on the table. Are they really for me? They are. She sat on the bed again. How long can I stay? The question was simple but full of meaning. Alan understood that she was asking about more than just that night. For as long as you want, he said. There's no rush to decide anything. Ayla nodded and lay down again. This time, she pulled the blanket over her body and snuggled into the pillow. Alan, she said, without opening her eyes. Yes. Thank you, Alan smiled. Thank you. For saving me. You're welcome. In a few minutes, Ayla was sleeping. Alan stood at the door for a while, watching. She looked so small in the big bed, but for the first time since he had found her, she seemed relaxed. There was no tension in her shoulders, no constant alertness she maintained when awake. For the first time in months, Ayla was sleeping peacefully. Alan gently closed the door and went down to the living room. He sat in the armchair and looked out the window at the lit garden. His life had completely changed in 1 week. 7 days ago, he was a successful businessman living alone in a big house, focused only on work and profits. Now there was a 5-year-old child sleeping upstairs, our child who had saved his life and who now depended on him to survive. He had no idea what he was doing. He knew nothing about caring for children, especially a child who had been through so much trauma. But one thing he knew for sure, he wasn't going to let Ayla go back to the streets. No matter what it took, he was going to give her the security and care she deserved. Upstairs, Ayla slept deeply for the first time in months, wrapped in the warmth of clean blankets and the security of solid walls. And for the first time since her mother had died, she dreamed good things. Ayla woke up on the second day to the smell of coffee and warm bread wafting through the house. For a moment she was confused, not remembering where she was. Then she saw the clean room, the soft bed, and remembered she was safe. She slowly went downstairs, following the smell. Alan was in the kitchen, making breakfast. When he saw her, he smiled. "Did you sleep well?" Ayla nodded, still a little shy. She had never woken up in a place where someone greeted her with a smile. "Are you hungry?" "I am." Alan served warm French toast, butter, jam, milk. Ayla looked at the neatly set table in astonishment. It was more food than she usually saw in a week. "You can eat as much as you want," Alan said, sitting across from her. Ayla took a piece of bread and smelled it before biting. It was warm, soft, with a golden crust that made a sound when she chewed. It was the best bread she had ever tasted. "Good?" Alan asked. "Very good." She ate slowly, savoring each bite. Alan watched, noticing how she paid attention to every detail of the food as if it were a treasure. After breakfast, Alan showed her the rest of the house. The living room with huge armchairs, the library full of books, the office with computers. Ayla touched things carefully, as if she was afraid of breaking them. "Do you work from home?" she asked, looking at the papers on the office desk. "Sometimes, but I have an office in the city too." "And what do you do?" "I have a company. We build buildings, houses." Ayla thought about that. "Like this one?" "Similar, but most are smaller." They went back to the kitchen. Alan made another coffee and sat beside her. "Ayla, do you want to take a bath? There's a bathtub in your room, with hot water." She looked at him with suspicion. "Why?" "Because it's nice. And because—" Alan hesitated. "Because you must be feeling dirty after so long on the street." Ayla looked at her own hands. They were indeed dirty, with long black nails from the dirt. "I don't know how." "What do you mean?" "I've never bathed in a bathtub." Alan realized there were many more basic things Ayla had never experienced. "Do you want me to teach you?" She nodded. Alan took Ayla to the bathroom in her room. It was large, with a white bathtub and soft towels hanging on the shelves. "First we fill the bathtub," he said, turning on the faucets. "The water has to be warm, not too hot, not too cold." Ayla watched the water fill the bathtub, fascinated. She had never seen so much clean water together. "Then you get in and use soap to wash yourself," Alan continued, showing her the soap and shampoo bottles. "And these towels are to dry yourself afterwards." Ayla touched one of the towels. It was softer than anything she had ever felt. "They're soft," she said, astonished. "They are. And they're yours. For everything here is yours now." When the bathtub was full, Alan tested the temperature. "Perfect. Can you manage alone, or do you want me to stay here?" "Alone," Ayla said, still shy. "Okay, if you need anything, just call. I'll be in the hallway." Alan closed the door and Ayla was left alone in the bathroom. She took off her old, dirty clothes and looked at the clear water in the bathtub. Carefully, she put one foot in first, then the other. The water was warm, enveloping her body like a hug. She slowly sat down, letting the water cover her legs. It was the best feeling she had ever experienced. Ayla stayed like that for a few minutes, just enjoying the warmth of the water. Then she picked up the soap and began to lather. The foam was white and fragrant, very different from the common soap her mother sometimes managed to buy. She washed her hair with shampoo, scrubbed her whole body until her skin was pink and clean. When she finished, she stayed in the water for a few more minutes, not wanting to get out. "Alan," she called. "I'm here," he replied from the hallway. "I'm done." "How was it?" Ayla opened the door, still wrapped in the towel. "It was good," she said, and for the first time since she arrived, she truly smiled. The smile transformed her entire face. Alan realized she was even more beautiful than he had imagined. Clean, with her hair shining, she looked like a normal child. "So now let's see the new clothes," he said. The clothes Alan had bought were on the desk in the room. Pants, t-shirts, a small dress, underwear, socks, shoes, all new, all clean. Ayla touched each piece with admiration. "Are they really for me?" "They are." She chose pink pants and a white t-shirt with a flower design. When she finished dressing, she looked at herself in the mirror. I look different, she said. You look beautiful, Alan said. And it was true. Clean and in new clothes, Ayla looked like a completely different child from the girl he had found sleeping under the awning. In the days that followed, Ayla discovered small miracles that for Alan were normal, everyday things. The hairbrush fascinated her. She had never had one, and brushing her hair after bathing became one of her favorite moments of the day. Why does it get so smooth? She asked, observing how her hair shone after being brushed. That's how hair gets when it's clean and brushed, Alan explained. The pillow was also a marvel. Every night, Ayla fluffed the pillow several times before lying down, testing its softness. It's like a cloud, she said one night. Have you ever seen clouds up close? Alan asked, joking. No, but I imagine they're like that. Regular food was perhaps the biggest discovery. 3 meals a day, always on time, always warm. Ayla still ate slowly, savoring each mouthful, but gradually relaxed and trusted that there would be more food at the next meal. Will there be breakfast again tomorrow? She asked on the second night. Yes, every day. And lunch? And lunch, and dinner too. Ayla smiled, an expression that was becoming more common every day. Alan observed all these small discoveries with a mixture of joy and sadness. Joy for being able to provide these experiences for her, sadness for realizing all she had lost in her first years of life. But what impressed him most was how Ayla was changing. Not just physically, although she was stronger, healthier, more rosy-cheeked, it was in her behavior too. She was starting to smile more. She still spoke little, but when she did, her voice was less shy. She explored the house with more confidence, touching things without as much fear of breaking. And Alan realized that he too was changing. His mornings no longer began by checking emails or calling the office. They began by making breakfast and talking with Ayla. His evenings were no longer spent working late. They were spent in the living room, sometimes in silence, sometimes talking, always in her company. He was learning to see the world through the eyes of a child. Things that were trivial to him, like hot water or food on the table, were miracles to her. This made him appreciate things he had long taken for granted. Alan, Ayla asked one afternoon while they were in the living room. Yes? Why do you take care of me? The question caught him by surprise. He thought for a moment before answering. Because you're special, he said, and because everyone deserves to be cared for. But you don't know me. I'm getting to know you now. Ayla was silent, thinking. Do you have children? She asked. No. Why? Never found the right person, and never had time. And now I have you. Ayla smiled again, that smile that lit up her entire face. It was that night that she finally told her story. They were sitting in the living room after dinner. Alan was reading the newspaper, and Ayla was drawing on a sheet of paper he had given her. Suddenly, she stopped drawing and looked at him. Alan, can I tell you something? Of course. Ayla put the pencil aside and turned to him. Mommy coughed a lot, she said, her voice low. Every day, every night. It was a bad cough. It made a lot of noise. Alan put the newspaper aside and gave her his full attention. She stayed in bed, couldn't get up. I brought her water, but she barely ate. Where did you live? In a small room. It was dark, smelled bad. Mommy said it was temporary, that we'd have a better house soon. Ayla paused for a moment, remembering. One morning I woke up and called her, but she didn't answer. I shook her, but she didn't move. Alan felt his heart ache. She was very cold, Ayla continued. I covered her with the blanket and waited. I thought she would wake up. How long did you wait? I don't know, a long time. When it started to smell bad, I understood she wasn't going to wake up anymore. The simplicity with which she told the most traumatic story of her life was heartbreaking. Then she slept and didn't wake up, Ayla said, using the words she had found to explain her mother's death. And what did you do? I waited a little longer. Then I left. I didn't know where to go, so I just walked. And how did you learn to live on the street? By watching others. There were people sleeping on the street too. I saw where they hid, how they found food. Ayla picked up the pencil again, but didn't go back to drawing. I was scared, she said. Scared of the drunk men, scared of the adults who asked questions, Scared of being taken to bad places. What bad places? Mummy always said not to trust strangers. She said they sometimes take children to places where they can't leave. Alan understood. She was talking about shelters, orphanages, maybe worse. So you hid. I hid. I learned to be invisible. Invisible. No one saw me. I passed by people and they didn't even look. It was like I didn't exist. But I saw you. Ayla looked at him. You were the first. The first what? The first one who really saw me. Not just looked, but saw. The phrase echoed in Alan's mind. She was right. All those people on the streets, all those who had passed her in recent months, probably saw her but chose not to truly see her. No one saw me, Ayla said, her voice almost a whisper. Only you. Alan moved closer to her on the sofa. Do you know why I saw you? Why? Because you saved my life first. You saw me when I was in danger. You helped me when you didn't have to. That made me realize you were special. Ayla thought about that. Do you think we saved each other? The question was too profound to come from a 5-year-old child, but it was accurate. I think so, Alan said. I think you not only saved me from the accident, you saved me from an empty life. What do you mean? Before I met you, I only thought about work, about money, about things that weren't really important. You showed me what's really important. What is? Caring for people, being kind, seeing who needs help and helping. Ayla smiled again, that smile that lit up her entire face. Then we really did save each other. Yes, we saved each other. They were silent for a while, each absorbing the conversation. Finally, Ayla returned to her drawing. Alan? Yes. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for saving me. That night, when Alan put Ayla to bed, she snuggled into the soft pillow and pulled the warm blanket over her. Good night, he said. Good night, Alan. Yes. Will there be warm bread again tomorrow? Yes. And will I be able to take a bath in the bathtub? Yes. And will you be here? I will be here. Ayla smiled and closed her eyes. Then it's good. Alan stood at the door for a moment, watching. A week ago, he was a lonely man living in a big, empty house. Now he had a child sleeping upstairs, and his house finally felt like a home. He had thought he was saving Ayla, but now he understood that she had saved him too. She had shown that life could be more than work and success. It could be about connection, about caring for someone, about small daily miracles like warm bread and soft towels. And for the first time in years, Alan felt complete. Today we're going out, Alan said during breakfast. Ayla stopped eating and looked at him with interest. Going out where? To buy some things for you. Clothes, toys, whatever you want. Really, really. Ayla finished breakfast faster than usual, eager to go out. She had been at Alan's house for a week, but had not left beyond the garden. Can I choose whatever I want? She asked, as Alan grabbed the car keys. You can choose whatever you want. In the car, Ayla pressed her face against the window, watching the city pass by. Everything seemed different from inside a car. Cleaner, more organized, less threatening. So where are we going first? She asked. The mall. It's a big place with many stores. I've never been to a mall. Alan was no longer surprised by these revelations. Every day he discovered more things Ayla had never experienced. The mall was busy when they arrived. Ayla was impressed by the size, the bright lights, the number of people walking back and forth. Hey, it's big, she said, holding Alan's hand. It is, but don't worry, we won't get lost. The first stop was a children's clothing store. The saleswoman greeted them with a professional smile. Good afternoon, how can I help you? We'd like to look at clothes for her, Alan said, pointing to Ayla. Size? He looked at Ayla, uncertain. Size 5 years old, the saleswoman said, assessing Ayla with an experienced eye. But she's tiny for her age. Perhaps a 4 would be better. The store was full of colors. Clothes hung on hangers, small mannequins dressed in children's clothes, shoes organized by size. You can choose whatever you want, Alan told Ayla. She walked through the store slowly, touching the clothes carefully. There were dresses, pants, t-shirts, coats, more clothes than she had seen in her entire life. You can try them on, the saleswoman said, Noticing Ayla's hesitation, Ayla looked at Alan, who nodded. "This one is pretty," she said, pointing to a pink dress with small flowers. "Do you want to try it on?" Ayla nodded. The saleswoman took the dress and Ayla to the fitting room. Alan waited outside. When she came out, Alan almost didn't recognize her. The pink dress fit her perfectly, highlighting her dark eyes and making her skin look rosier. "How does it look?" she asked, and spinning to show the dress. "Oh, it's beautiful," Alan said, and it was true. "Mommy always said that one day I would have a beautiful dress," she said, smoothing the fabric. "But we never had money. And now you do. Can I keep it?" "You can." Ayla chose a few more pieces, 2 pairs of pants, 3 t-shirts, a blue jacket that she said was the color of the sky, and pajamas with star designs. "Mommy used to buy used clothes at the market," she said, looking at the price tags, "whenever she found something that fit me." In the shoe section, she was fascinated by a pair of pink sparkly flats that lit up when she walked. "They light up," she said, excited, taking a few steps to see the lights flash. "Do you like them?" "I like them a lot. Mommy always said shoes were a luxury. We only bought them when mine had holes." "Then they're yours." After the clothes, they went to a toy store. Ayla had never seen so many toys together. There were dolls, cars, puzzles, games, stuffed animals of all sizes. "I don't know what to choose," she said, looking around with wide eyes. "You don't have to choose just one. You can get several." "Several?" she asked, incredulous. "Mommy used to say toys were for rich kids." "You're a child, and you deserve toys." Ayla walked through the store aisles as if she were in a museum. She touched the toys with reverence, as if they were works of art. She stopped in front of a doll with blonde hair and a blue dress. "She's pretty," Ayla said. "Now she looks like a doll I saw in a shop window once. Mommy and I stopped to look, but it was too expensive. Do you want her?" "Can I?" "Of course." Ayla picked up the doll and hugged it. It was the first doll she had ever owned. "What will her name be?" Alan asked. Ayla thought for a moment. "Luna. Because she has bright eyes like the moon Mommy and I used to look at through the window." She also chose a brown teddy bear, a puzzle with a castle design, and a drawing kit with colored pencils, markers, and paper. "Mommy used to let me draw on the back of old papers," she said, holding the box of pencils. She said I drew well." "Is that enough?" Alan asked, seeing her arms full of toys. "That's enough," she said, smiling. "It's much more than I dreamed of." After shopping, Alan suggested having lunch at the mall. "There's a good diner here. Want to try it?" "I do." The diner was colorful and noisy, full of families with children. There was music playing softly and the smell of hamburgers and fries in the air. Alan found a table near the window. Ayla looked around, fascinated. "It's my first time in a place like this," she said. "What do you mean?" "A place just for eating, with tables, waiters, a menu. Mommy and I always ate at home. Or when we didn't have money, we'd share a bread in the park." "You've never eaten in a restaurant?" "No. Mommy said it was for people who had a lot of money. We used to dream about it sometimes." The waiter brought the menu. Alan read the options to Ayla, explaining each dish. "What do you want?" "Hamburger," she said without hesitation. "With fries." Mommy always said that one day we would eat hamburgers in a nice place. "And to drink." "Juice. What flavors do you have?" "Orange, apple, grape." "Grape," she said, excited. Mommy liked grapes. When she had money, she'd buy a small bunch to share with me. While waiting for the food, Ayla observed the other families in the diner. Children laughing, parents talking, everyone looking relaxed and happy. Alan: "Yes? Are these people happy?" "I think so." "Why?" "They seem different from the people I knew. Mommy was always worried about money, about food, about the rent for the room." "You don't have to worry about that anymore," he said softly. No. Now you're safe." The food arrived. Ayla's hamburger was big, with 2 slices of bread, meat, cheese, lettuce, and tomato. The fries were golden and crispy, and the grape juice was purple and sweet. Ayla picked up the hamburger with both hands and took a big bite. Her eyes lit up. "Is it good?" she nodded, chewing with pleasure. Then she took a sip of the juice and smiled even more. "It's sweet," she said, "and the hamburger is warm and tasty. Mommy would be so happy if she knew." Alan ate his salad, watching Ayla experience each flavor with enthusiasm. She ate slowly, savoring each fry, each sip of juice. "Alan," she said in the middle of lunch. "Yes, Mommy always said that one day our lives would get better, that we would have a nice house, new clothes, tasty food. And now you have all that." "Yes, she was right, except—" Ayla stopped speaking and looked at the hamburger. "Except what?" "Except she's not here to see it." Alan felt his heart ache. Even amidst so much joy, Ayla carried the longing for her mother. "I think she's watching," he said softly. "From somewhere, she's seeing you happy." Ayla smiled again and took another bite of her hamburger. "You know what?" she said, looking back at Alan. "Say what?" She bites the hamburger and says, smiling, "It's the best day in the world." The simple phrase hit Alan hard. For him, that was just a normal Saturday, a trip to the mall, some shopping, lunch at a diner, things he did without much thought. But for Ayla, who had spent her entire life dreaming of these simple experiences with her mother, it was the best day in the world. "Why is it the best day?" he asked. "Because I never had new clothes. I never had toys. I never ate in a nice place like this. And because all the things Mommy and I dreamed of are happening. And because what? Because you're here with me like you're my family." Alan felt his eyes well up. In 1 week, this small girl had completely changed his life. She had shown him that joy could come from the simplest things, from things that other people took for granted. "It's the best day for me too," he said. "Really? Really?" They finished lunch talking about the toys Ayla had chosen, about the new clothes, about how she would draw with the new pencils, thinking of her mother. "Can I wear the pink dress today?" she asked. "You can wear it whenever you want. And can I sleep with Luna?" "You can. And tomorrow can I draw with the new pencils?" "I want to draw Mommy in the beautiful dress she always wanted to have." "You can do whatever you want." When they left the diner, Ayla held Alan's hand with one hand and carried the doll Luna with the other. She skipped a little as she walked, making her new shoes light up. "Alan?" "Yes. Thank you for the best day in the world. Mommy would be very happy. Thank you for making it the best day." On the way home, Ayla fell asleep in the back seat of the car, hugging Luna. Alan looked at her in the rearview mirror and smiled. A week ago, he had almost died in a plane crash. Today, he had a daughter. Sometimes life changed in ways you could never imagine. Sometimes a small child saved your life, and you discovered that you could save hers too. Sometimes two lost people found each other and discovered they could form a family. When they got home, Ayla woke up and ran to her room to organize her new things. Alan followed her and found her carefully arranging each piece of clothing in the closet, each toy on the shelf. "Everything in the right place now," she said, satisfied. "Mommy always said that when we had a real home, I'd have a room all to myself. Your room is looking beautiful. It's becoming what Mommy dreamed of, like a princess's room." "It was already a real room." "No," she said, looking around. "Now it has my things. It has the dreams Mommy and I had. Now it's my home." And Alan knew she was right. That house had become a home, not just for her, but for both of them. A place where the dreams of a departed mother became reality, through the love of someone who learned to see the world with the eyes of the heart. The best day in the world had become the first day of a new life, where the memory of a loving mother mingled with the promise of a better future. Alan woke up early on Sunday, as he always did. He made coffee and went to see if Ayla was awake yet. He found her in her room, sitting on the bed with the doll Luna in her lap, still in her pajamas. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning. Can I wear the pink dress today?" "Of course. Shall we have breakfast first?" They went downstairs to the kitchen together. Ayla was excited, talking about her new toys and how she was going to draw with the colored pencils after breakfast. Alan turned on the television while he made breakfast. It was Sunday, so there was a variety show on. He wasn't paying much attention, focused on making pancakes for Ayla. That's when he heard his name. Businessman Alan Dryson was photographed yesterday at a shopping mall in the North Side, accompanied by a child. Alan stopped stirring the pancake batter and looked at the TV. On the screen, there was a photo of him and Ayla leaving the diner. She was holding his hand and carrying the doll, Luna. They were both smiling. Dryson, known for his private life, had never been seen publicly with children. The girl's identity is a mystery, as is the nature of their relationship. "Alan," Ayla called. "What's wrong?" He quickly turned off the TV. "Nothing, let's have breakfast." But Alan knew it was something. Someone had photographed them at the mall, and now the photo was on television. In a few hours, it would be in all the newspapers. They had breakfast normally. Ayla put on the pink dress and played with Luna, while Alan tried to think about what to do. Maybe it wasn't a big deal. Maybe people would quickly forget. At 10 in the morning, the doorman called. "Mr. Dryson, there are some reporters here at the gate. They want to speak with you." "How many?" "3 cars, and it looks like more are arriving." Alan sighed. He hadn't forgotten. "Don't let anyone in. Thank you." He went to the living room window and discreetly looked out. There were several cars on the street, people with cameras, reporters holding microphones. "Alan," Ayla appeared beside him. "Who are those people?" "They're reporters, people who work for newspapers and television. What do they want?" Alan hesitated. How to explain to a 5-year-old child that their private lives had become news? "They want to know who you are," he finally said. "Because they saw me with you yesterday and got curious." Ayla looked out the window again. More cars were arriving. "Are they going to come in here?" "No, I won't let them." But even as he said that, Alan was worried. Not for himself, but for Ayla. She had spent months hiding, learning to be invisible, and now she was being exposed to the entire country. At 11 in the morning, the doorman called again. "Mr. Dryson, more reporters are arriving, and some TV vans too." "How many people are there now?" "About 20, and they're asking about the girl." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know her name, if she's your daughter, if you're planning to adopt." "A reporter said your photo is already circulating online." Alan closed his eyes. It was worse than he thought. "Keep everyone out." "Yes, sir." Alan sat on the sofa next to Ayla. She was hugging Luna, looking out the window. "Will they leave?" she asked. "They will, just have to wait a little." But at 2 in the afternoon, there were even more reporters. Alan could hear them outside, talking loudly, some even shouting questions towards the house. Ayla was getting more and more frightened. She had hidden in her room with all her new toys, but she could still hear the noise outside. Alan knew he had to do something. The reporters weren't going to leave until they got some information. And the longer it took, the worse it would be for Ayla. At 3 in the afternoon, he made a decision. "Ayla, I'm going out to talk to them," he said, entering her room. "No," she said, getting up quickly. "What if they hurt you?" "They won't hurt me. They just want to ask questions." "What if they want to take me?" The question broke Alan's heart. Ayla was still afraid of being taken by strangers, even after a week of feeling safe. "No one is going to take you," he said, kneeling in front of her. "I promise. You'll stay here, I'll talk to them quickly, and then they'll leave." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Alan went downstairs and to the front door. He took a deep breath and opened it. Immediately, dozens of flashes went off. Microphones were shoved towards him, and several voices began to speak at once. "Mr. Dryson, who is the child? Is she your daughter? Where did you meet? Are you planning to adopt?" Alan raised his hand, asking for silence. "I'm going to speak, but only once," he said, his voice firm. "After that, I want you to respect our privacy." The reporters quieted down, waiting. "This girl saved my life," Alan said. 2 weeks ago, my plane crashed in a vacant lot. I was trapped in the wreckage, injured, unable to get out. This child, at just 5 years old, had the courage to approach the flames and pull me out." The reporters quickly took notes, some recording with cell phones. She was alone, living on the streets, without family. "I brought her home because it was the least I could do for someone who saved my life." "What's her name?" a reporter yelled. "Her name is not important. What is important is that she is now safe and cared for." "Are you going to adopt her?" another asked. Alan looked directly into the TV camera. I am going to adopt her. She will be my daughter, legally and by heart. And I ask that you respect our privacy. This child has already been through enough trauma. She doesn't need to be exposed like this. Mr. Drayson, that's all I have to say, Alan interrupted him. Now I ask you to leave my house and leave us in peace. He went inside and closed the door, ignoring the reporters' shouts for more information. Isla was at the top of the stairs, looking at him. You said you're going to adopt me, she asked. I did. If you want. I do. Then let's take care of it first thing tomorrow. Gradually, the reporters left. By late afternoon, the street was silent again. But Alan knew the story was already spreading. On television, on the internet, in newspapers. Tomorrow everyone would know about him and Ayla. Is everything okay now? Ayla asked during dinner. Everything's okay. And tomorrow will be even better. Why? Because tomorrow you'll officially be my daughter. On Monday morning, Alan woke up early and called his lawyer. Marcus, I need you to prepare the adoption papers for today. Alan, adoption takes months. There's a process, social analysis, hearings. Not in this case. The girl has no family, no documents. She lived on the streets. I want everything resolved today. I'll see what I can do. Don't see. Do. Use all the contacts you have, every favor you can call in, today. 2 hours later, Marcus called back. I managed to book an appointment at the county clerk's office for 2 o'clock. The judge is a friend of ours. He'll expedite the process. Perfect, Alan told Ayla during lunch. We're going to the county clerk's office today. It's a place where they make important documents. What kind of document? The document that says you're my daughter. And then you'll have a last name. You'll have a new birth certificate. You'll be able to go to school. You'll be a normal child. With a normal family. With a normal family. They went to the county clerk's office at 2 in the afternoon. It was an old building downtown with long hallways and rooms full of papers. The process was faster than Alan expected. The judge, an elderly and kind man, asked Ayla a few simple questions. Do you want Mr. Alan to be your father? I do. And will you like living with him? I already do. Then it's decided. The judge signed the papers, the clerk stamped the documents, and in half an hour everything was settled. Congratulations, the judge told Alan. Now you are officially Ayla Dryson's father. Ayla Dryson, she repeated, testing the sound of the new name. Cassie, do you like it? I like it very much. As they left the county clerk's office, Ayla held Alan's hand. They were walking to the car when she stopped. Can I call you Dad? The question he had been waiting for since the decision to adopt had formed in his mind. Alan knelt on the sidewalk, getting down to her level. He knelt, smiling with teary eyes. Yes, you can. You're my daughter now, and you always will be. Forever. Forever. Ayla smiled and hugged him right there on the busy downtown sidewalk. Dad, she said, testing the word. Daughter, he replied. And at that moment, Alan understood that his life had completely changed. He was no longer a lonely businessman living in a big, empty house. He was a father. He had a family. He had someone to care for, someone to love, someone who loved him back. Shall we go home? Ayla asked. Let's go home. On the way, Ayla fell asleep in the back seat, still holding the adoption documents. Alan looked at her in the rearview mirror and smiled. 2 weeks ago, he had almost died in a plane crash. Today, he had a daughter. Sometimes life changed in ways you could never imagine. Sometimes a small child saved your life, and you discovered that you could save hers too. Sometimes 2 lost people found each other and discovered they could form a family. When they got home, Ayla woke up and ran to her room. Alan followed her and found her organizing the documents on the desk next to her new toys. Now everything's in the right place, she said. What do you mean? The toys, the clothes, the papers that say you're my dad, now everything's complete. Alan looked around the room. She was right. 2 weeks ago, that was just an empty room. Now it was his daughter's room. Dad? Ayla said. Yes, thank you for adopting me. Thank you for letting me be your dad. You're welcome. And Alan knew that house had become much more than a shelter. It had become a home, the home of a family that had formed in an unlikely way, but was now complete. Outside, life went on. Reporters could come and go, stories could be told and forgotten. But inside that house, a new family had been born, and the gate that protected this family would remain closed to anyone who wanted to disturb the peace they had found together. 6 months had passed since that day at the county clerk's office. Alan and Ayla's lives had found a calm and happy rhythm. She was in school, making friends, learning to read better. He had rearranged his schedule to spend more time with her, discovering that being a father was better than any business success, but there was something Alan wanted to do, something he had been thinking about since the first day Ayla arrived at his house. "Dad, what are you building over there?" Ayla asked one morning, pointing out the window. Outside, workers were busy on a plot of land Alan had bought near the house. Construction was almost finished. "It's a surprise," he said, "for you and for other children too." The project had been born from a simple conversation. Ayla was drawing in the living room when she commented, "Dad, do you think there are other children sleeping on the street today?" "Probably. Are they cold? Hungry? Maybe." Ayla stopped drawing and looked at him. "We could help them, couldn't we?" And that's how Living Roots was born. The inauguration day arrived on a sunny morning. Alan was nervous, but Ayla was excited. She had chosen a special blue dress for the occasion. "It's the color of the sky," she said, remembering the words she always used. "You look beautiful." The building was welcoming, with colorful walls and large windows. There were gardens, a playground, and a sign at the entrance. "Living Roots, Welcome Center." Several people were waiting: journalists, authorities, staff who would work at the center, but most importantly, some families who would already be welcomed there. Alan saw children Ayla's age, others younger, some older, all with the same look he had seen in her eyes that first day, the look of someone who needed help. "Ready?" he asked Ayla. "Ready." Alan gave a short speech about the project, about how a special child had changed his life and inspired him to help others. And now the person who inspired all of this will cut the ribbon. "My daughter, Ayla." Ayla took the scissors and cut the ribbon. People applauded. "Ayla, do you want to say something?" a reporter asked. Ayla looked at the cameras, then at the children who were there, then at Alan. "Can I?" she asked him. "Of course." She approached the microphone. She speaks in a soft voice. "I lived on the street before I met my dad. It was cold. I was hungry. I was scared. But now I have a home, warm food, a soft bed, and most importantly, it's good to have a family again. I love you." The simple words touched everyone's hearts. Alan felt his eyes well up. "I love you too," he said, bending down to hug her. That night, after the visitors left, Alan and Ayla were at home. She was in her room, organizing her toys before bed. Alan observed her room. At home, on the shelf, her mother's blue button was carefully kept. Ayla had never parted with it. It was always there, a reminder of the love that came before him. "Good night, daughter," he said, kissing her forehead. "Good night, Dad." He left the room. The light in Ayla's room remained on, as always. Ayla liked to sleep with a little light. In the living room, Alan sat and looked out the window. Outside, the city slept. But somewhere, there were children awake, cold, alone. Tomorrow, some would have a place to go. A warm, safe, loving place. Just as Ayla had found family, love, new beginnings. And in the upstairs room, with the light on and the blue button carefully kept on the shelf, a girl who had been saved slept